My name's Sean Lindersmith, and I decided to start a podcast called the Coach to Coach Podcast. This pod is about coaches, their journeys, their stories, where they come from. I felt like my first guest should be someone close to me that would help my audience understand um, a little bit about who I am and where I come from. I'm not the first coach in my family. My mom and my dad were my first coaches, and so I felt my mom would be a really good first guest to bring on and talk through it. And to be fair, it actually started as a joke between me and my partner. And I said, "Oh, I'm going to FaceTime my mom to test the audio and see if I can't mess with her to tell her I'm recording." And it turned out my mom's got a bunch of nuggets, and hearing her journey about how she started coaching, albeit simple, was amazing. You know, I'm I am a coach because I was coached, because I've had really good examples, and the first two were my dad and my mom. Um, so much so that they started the little league in my town with other families, and it's a story many of you have heard, one on one, but it's an important story. There, my sister and I didn't have a place to play. My friends didn't have a place to play, and my mom's got a really interesting backstory about how she started coaching and how she gave feedback, and I think it's a real interesting window into who she is, who I am, where I come from, and sort of what my influences were early on. I think players of mine and assistant coaches that I've coached with will see pretty quick where some of my philosophies about gambling with energy and effort come from, where telling people it's not if, it's when you get that chance. I think there's some really cool themes and threads to pull on here, and I'm a little afraid, but very excited to talk to my mom about her journey in coaching and what that was like for her. And welcome to the Coach to Coach podcast. Usually when you start a podcast, you do like an intro episode, like who you are, what are you about, where do you come from? And after our conversation earlier to test the microphone and all that fun stuff, I thought it might be a cool introduction to me to interview you, because of sort of what coaching and sports, like what role coaching and sports have played in our lives. So one, I want to thank you, Mom, for answering the phone as always, and then agreeing to sit down for a podcast.
Okay.
So first question, what's your name and what is your background in sports?
My name is Donnita Lindersmith. My background in sports is I used to be a runner in elementary school. I was the fastest girl in my school. I didn't really play any outside sports because my parents didn't let me, because I had a different name on my birth certificate than I was going by, and they didn't know how to explain that to me until I was into 7th and 8th grade. So I didn't get to play softball or any of that. But I've tried to play outside softball or different sports when people would ask us to step in and do charity things, for the Little League and stuff. But I was a runner mostly. And I did half marathons for quite a few years.
Half marathons? You never told me about half marathons. When did this happen?
All those medals on the wall by the Christmas tree.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
You pay attention to me.
Sorry. I thought there was like a road running career pre me and my sister, right? No, yes, you have done quite a few half marathons for a lot of different reasons, not just exercise. So yes, you're right. My bad. So tell me, we were talking earlier, and I asked you, how did you become a coach? Right. So what was that? What was that like? Maybe a little context. My family, very big into the Little League in our town, Fontana, California, specifically Southridge. And my dad was my first coach. Then, we sort of transitioned through a couple other years, and then it was time for me to try out, and all of a sudden, my mom's my coach. Mom, walk me through how that happened. How did you decide? What were the questions? How did you become a coach at Southridge Little League?
I was sitting at your tryouts, and they were talking about they were short coaches. So since you were one of the better players in Little League, I thought, I can do this. I know the other kids. I've been watching kids for a while. So I just raised my hand and said, I'll be a coach. And they just said, okay. And then that's when you said, I yelled at you that you don't need to try out. I'm your coach now. And the ground opened up and you died of embarrassment.
No, it's interesting. And we sort of talked about this a little bit before, and I'm hoping to dive into it a bit with some of the magic that I thought was coming out of that conversation. But I was fielding ground balls, and like Jeremy Lemke and the Huggins brothers and everybody were, we were all out there fielding ground balls, and I was really excited to sort of try out for the first time. And baseball was really big in our town, in our city. And it was like tryouts were like a thing. There were like hundreds of people around and multiple fields going on. And as I'm getting ready to field another grounder to sort of see where I stand amongst my peers, my mother stands up in the state, like literally stands up, and you could see her from a mile away, and says, "Hey, you don't need to try out anymore. I'm going to be your coach." And all my buddies were like, "Your mom's going to be your coach, dude?" And I was like, "I guess so," but I ended up finishing the tryout. Tell me a little bit more about going from agreeing to being a coach to, how did you pick your teams? What was it like picking your assistant coach? Talk to me through that stuff.
Well, picking my assistant coach was pretty easy because Tosh had been in our lives for a couple of years, and you used to do some things that made him laugh, and he became friends with us. Like you couldn't pitch anymore because you were hungry. That was one of them. He was rolling on the grass. So he's been a friend. And so when I chose to do that, I asked him if he wanted to be my assistant coach, and he totally agreed with me. So it went with that. Tosh and I did it. And we watched kids play for a couple of years. So we knew, and we also knew, and this is a big thing in coaching and parents, you sometimes don't choose a child because of the parent. So we discussed that, to be honest with everybody. There were kids we did not want. Even if they were good, wouldn't take them because of the parents. They make the team not be cohesive. So we sat and discussed a lot of things. I had you, and then we had Jeremy, because Tosh was my assistant coach. And then we just sat down and went through the list of kids, and that's how we chose our team.
So what I just heard you say is that you and Satoshi Lemke, Jeremy's dad and Angela's dad, sat down and talked about which kids you wanted on the team based off of what their parents were like?
No. We wanted kids. We knew which kids we wanted, but there are some parents that were in the league, and as sad as it is, people didn't want their children because the parents made the life so miserable. So one of the things we discussed is if we got them, what we would do, but we tried to avoid, and I did the rest of my coaching, tried to avoid those parents because they just made people's lives miserable.
It's interesting because that's not a new phenomenon, right? A lot of people think that that's sort of what's happening now. This generation of players is the families are ultra involved. So sounds like you were dealing with that when I was 10, 11 years old.
Yeah.
Right? So
you had some really, I want to say, mean parents. I don't understand. I mean, I always believe you let your kid go and learn things and stuff. And these parents just assumed their kids were the best, and they made demands on the coach. I didn't need that when I had 11 little young men that I could, 11, 12 young men that would listen to me, and no parents interrupted me. They worked with us.
No, I think that's interesting, right? In the where I'd like to go from there with that is, you know, we had talked about a little bit about this is you coming into what is traditionally or what had traditionally been a male coaching space, right? And how did you feel being the only woman in Southridge Little League and probably in Fontana proper across Southwest Little League, North, all the other ones that were there. What was that like when you first started, being a woman in quote unquote a man's world sort of thing?
I never really thought of it like that. My concern was at the time is, do I really know what I'm doing, and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the players and what I could do with the players. And I tried my very best. So I came up with different things at practices, and then had quite a few practices. Didn't know what I would, didn't know how I was really doing, except I had a few parents, and Sally and Gary Huggins came to me. I don't think their name was Huggins, but
McGinnis. Yeah, John and David's mom and dad.
Yes, yeah. The Huggins brothers, they said, "Oh my God, we just love what you're doing. Those boys listen to you. You're out there by yourself," because Tosh worked a different shift. So a lot of I was doing the practices by myself, and I had 12 of you, 11, 12-year-old boys, 10 and 11-year-old boys. And you guys listen to everything I say. They used to sit there and watch. I had a couple parents do that, but I do remember Sally and Gary telling me they were amazed at how good I did that with that. And I had no idea how I was doing until a few of them said that to me.
Did it even cross your mind that you were the only woman out there?
No.
Fair. Okay.
Not until somebody points it out to you and they're rude about it. Then you think, what's wrong with them? I don't think I ever felt less because I was a woman, and I didn't make me do anything differently. I just did what I believed was the best for our teams. Just kept going and trying to learn. I didn't let it bother me. I know that I did mention it to the boys most of the time that, you're going to be made fun of because you have a girl coach, and don't even listen to them because we are better than them. I think I said that a few times.
Yeah, I think that's remarkable to say, right? Is you did put that out there. I do remember that as a member of the team, and maybe not understanding quite where that's coming from because you were just our coach at that point, right? So, and you were just my mom, not just my mom. You were my mom, and you were my coach, right? So, tell me a little bit about. You said you had to learn and sort of figure some things out on the fly, obviously not having a baseball background, right? What sort of things, where did you look for baseball knowledge? Like, how did you develop practice plans? Where did you learn from?
But I had watched a couple things. Your dad at that point had been going with Bob Morales on the major leagues, and I watched a couple of their practices, and I did watch other coaches when I wasn't a coach, what they did in practice. And so I took it from there, the ground balls. If you missed a ball, you ran. I mean, you got to get down on I had told you guys all the things, hitting the ball and doing all that, and the stretching. And I looked that up, and Coach was a big help to me because he's always been involved in it. So he helped me a lot. So we came up with scenarios for me to do when he wasn't there. But most of it was just common sense, I believe.
You got to catch the ball. You got to throw the ball.
Yeah, you got to get, and I think you guys, everybody, like maybe the second practice, nobody even questioned me with they missed a ball when I hit it to them. They just dropped their glove and turned around and ran.
Oh, we ran a lot. Some of us ran more than others and biked their way to practice.
That's true.
Yeah. Who was the one that biked to practice?
This kid named Sean. I don't know why. Because I know why. Because I would get mad at you and you'd be mouthy, and I'd just leave you there.
Yeah.
I had to prove that I wasn't favoring you.
You did not favor me. I will give you that. I had to earn every single thing every minute of playing time that I did.
And I believe all of them knew that as well, because we did have this discussion earlier that I was very honest with kids. We had new kids that never played before, and some of you had been playing for years. And I put out there that, each kid had to play at least 2 innings, one at bat. And I have kids that are here that have played their whole lives and earned their position as a full-time player. You guys can do it too.
Yeah.
But until you do, I'm not sitting them, or they do something wrong, I'm not sitting them. And a couple of kids did earn their way. They worked really hard at it.
There was a very meritocracy based system for sure, right? I think we talked a little bit about this too, is, guys like Eric Hutron, Andy Mayung, John Dwyer, I think at one point on the Yankees, right? These were guys that like you wouldn't pick in the top 5 rounds or whatever for the little league draft, but they ended up becoming, I think what we call role players, right? They were players that came in, figured out some skills. They figured out how to, where they best fit in. And it was always interesting to see that those guys were just as important as, Jeremy and myself and Michael Logan and those guys that were the quote unquote, like full-time, the players that had been playing most of their lives. Right. I think it was really interesting to see you create a space or hold space for everyone in the team, not just your son. Clearly I had to work my butt off to stay where I was at or earn my spot. Right. How did you develop that sort of philosophy of every person has a place in the team?
I'm not sure. Sometimes they look defeated, and you didn't want them to be defeated. You wanted them to be pumped up, because you never knew in a game when one of those kids, 2 inning kids that I would talk about, would be the one to come in and pull the play off that helped you win the game, or caught the ball when they didn't think they could. And then the rest of the team took as much joy in it as they did at that point. And that happened a lot to us on the White Sox and the Yankees. We had some kids that came in that were 2 inning kids, and they knew, I think because I instilled it in them, that you can do this when it's your turn. And a couple of them did it, which made me really proud.
I don't think many people realize how important those role players are. A lot of folks look at the minimum time players as sort of a burden, and it's not a burden. You have to, it's not if, it's when you get that opportunity to get a fly ball hit your way or a kick kicked at you in rugby or soccer, right? So I think it's very important to develop those people.
Well, I think it was important too, as our teammates, you saw me doing what I was doing and trying to encourage them. And I explained my way. I mean, even as 10, 11, 12-year-old young man, but you did work really hard to help your teammates, your fellow teammates. And you know what? That made them feel part of the group. Like Andy Mayung. I mean, the first time I told him to go to right field. Where did he go? He went to a totally different field. We all kind of looked at him, and then you all called him back over. You have to understand, some kids don't have what you had, a parent that got involved in that, never played sports, never watched sports. And I'm as bad as I can be. I mean, I'm hard nosed. I feel bad for people that are, I don't like people make fun of people that don't have the talent they have. I don't believe that is, I'd rather sit a talented player and put somebody else in if that talented player is a jerk.
But were there any moments, and it could be from any time, not like during your time of coaching, but like, were there any moments that sort of you look back on and say like, wow, that really made it worth it? Like, yeah, I raised my hand. I didn't know much about baseball. It was my kids' team, whatever you want to say. But like, were there some moments that were really special, or some of your favorite moments?
Well, Eric Hutron came to my house because we had a telephone problem. He was one of the players. He wanted to pitch so bad, and I gave him the opportunity to pitch. And I urged him as we went. His mom used to tell me he was so excited. Well, he was a grown man and came to my house. He was my telephone repairman. And he said, "Do you remember me?" And I kind of looked at him and thought, well, a little bit. And then he told me who he was. I said, "Oh, yes, I do." And he said, "I will never forget that you gave me the opportunity to pitch, and you coached me and you helped me." He goes, "Now that makes me coaching my kids. Now it makes me want to continue because of something you did." So I had him. I still am in touch with kids that I haven't seen in years, but they're my Facebook friends and they still call me coach. And do you remember this? And they'll throw up a picture now and again of me being a coach. I think one of the favorite ones they threw up was when I was the dunk tank, when I was the all-star manager. Made more money for that than everybody else.
It's pretty much my life savings to that point in my allowance. But sorry, I wanted to dunk you. No, I think that's pretty special to hear, and obviously, I hear it the most, being your son. And let's talk a little bit about the All-Star thing. How did your teams do? What was it like? What were the results of the teams that you coached?
Well, my White Sox, I believe, tied for first place. Year I went up, and I believe I went to the Yankees, and so I knew a lot of kids at that point. And I believe I called you on one of them to see who was better, one brother over the other. They'll never forgive me for that. I went with Dennis
Connor. Yeah.
Dennis Connor. I chose his son as one of my. I didn't know him too well. He was new, but we coached Yankees. We actually took first place. We went to city tournament. I think it was 1-0. We lost, but there was controversy going on in that, but I'm not going to get into that. They didn't like a woman being in the position I was in. And it was said to umpires that were from our league and they knew about it. So that was neither here nor there, but my Yankees did really, really well. I think almost undefeated or were undefeated.
Yeah. And we're talking about when I was 12 years old at this point, right? It was,
we won it.
Yeah, you did win it. And by winning it, what did that make you? Like, what was the result of that? What sort of honor did you earn from winning that division that year? I was 12 years old.
I was an all-star coach for major boys. I was the first female all-star coach for 11 and 12-year-old boys.
At the time, it was just normal for us, right? Because you'd already coached us a couple times. There was a 1-year hiatus where you coached Nicole's team, but we won't talk about how you didn't go back to coaching softball. You were the first woman to coach a boys all-star team in Little League history, as far as we know. Like you said, in the city tournaments where our top two teams would go play the top two teams from Southwest or some of the other little leagues in Fontana, which was quite the big city then. It's even bigger now, but then it was, sports were pretty central to
Little League was a big thing.
Yeah, huge thing, right? What was it like coaching a boys all-star team and sort of like going from knowing your team to, the other best players in the league, so to speak? How did you work with them? Did you bring in other coaches? Talk me through what that was like.
Well, when we chose, the All-Stars were chosen, I knew most of the kids. I watched them play. I watched them grow up. And I left it open. All the coaches could help me. And believe it or not, they all came out and helped me one way or the other. Assistant coaches and coaches. The players, I didn't have a problem. I knew their talents. I knew what they could do. I had one player, Josh Newswander, which I've known for him forever. He came up to me and went before the All-Stars and said, I hope I'm on All-Stars. He goes, I can't be your home run hitter, but I can get on base. And who became my home run hitter? It was him that won for us. So I had no problems with the kids. I knew their talents and we used it, and they knew some were going to sit out and some weren't going to sit out, and they knew what was going on. And we worked really well. I don't think we had any issues with that team.
Yeah. How did you?
That we didn't go all the way. That was the thing, but they were still very excited.
I mean, not everybody can go all the way.
And for us, we went to I believe it was the semifinals.
Yeah. We didn't play bad.
No,
by any means. No. And we just, you only get so much time together, which is one of the things that I think I've become pretty strong at, is taking teams in like a camp scenario and getting them to gel pretty quickly. And like, I'm thinking through this now as we're talking about it. I think, our time in Little League and All-Stars and stuff sort of helped that create that sort of how to connect and how to get people to move into a goal together pretty quickly, you know?
Well, and I also think by that time, I done it, what, maybe 2 years, 3 years, 2 years.
Well, you'd coach the White Sox our 9 and 10 year, and then you went and coached Nicole when I was 11, and
And
then at 12, that's when you took over the Yankees, right?
well, and then at that point, I didn't have any problem with parents. They knew my style. They knew what I meant, that I wasn't going to take anything from parents. So they were only just helpful. And whatever we told the kids they needed to do, they helped with that. So that was a big thing there. And believe it or not, the majority of you went on to be in seniors, I believe it was, and you
Yeah.
took district that year. You went all the way on the district that year. So I think and it was with Victor, which he helped me with the 12-year-old all-star. So
Yeah. Yeah. So just thinking back about all this, Mom, right? Like, how do you see coaching and sports? What role do those two things play in our lives as a family?
well, believe it or not, when you wanted to try out for baseball, when you were 5, I believe it was, your dad went to, and he became your coach. I think he got the same thing. There was no coaches and he did it. He had no idea what he was doing. We didn't really play sports when we were younger. He played basketball, I believe. And
Yeah.
then I don't know, you just loved it and your sister got into it. So we just kept going with it. And we met lifelong friends, becoming little league. We got on the board. We did things. You and your sister umpired, which was a big thing. And you just knew every kid in the neighborhood, you know?
Yeah, we did know every kid in the neighborhood. Tell me a little bit about that, right? The junior umpire program. I think that started when I had to have been 12 or 13. Chad and Brian and Nicole, myself, Jackie, Reina, and Joseph DeHaro, like Brandon Morales, right? There was a lot of us. Obviously, we were all the board members' kids, right?
Yeah, but there was others that weren't. Yeah, I was pretty good. I think the only time that didn't really work out was when Mo decided to have brothers and sisters, or brothers and brothers, work together on the field. And you're like, oh, I think you and your sister got into it about something.
So what we're talking about here is the little league that we all played in for the longest time. I mean, a long time. Started a junior umpire program when I was about 12 years old. Was Ron Rogers the one that started that?
And Lee Whitener.
And Lee Whitener, right? And what was the reason why they started the junior umpires program?
We didn't have enough adults, and they thought that you guys could do the farm and the minor games. And they just thought that would be good to get umpires to come in, Jeremy Benz and all of you to come in. But so they did classes for all of you, and the ones that wanted to join, and you also got to earn some money.
We did earn some money, and I think that's an important part of like match officiating or refereeing or umpiring these days, is because it is a source of income and a different sort of stream of income that you can get anywhere you go. Everywhere is looking
$15 a game or something, which was big time for you guys. On a Saturday, you can make a lot of money.
I remember saving up my money and buying Oakley glasses when I was like 14, 15 years old because I was umpiring games, right? So it's kind of circling back. There were a lot of siblings that umpired, and we would umpire separately or with the other person's siblings. And I think Mo Rogers, Brian and Chad's mom and Ron's wife, right? She decided to put brother and sister, brother and brother, sister and brother together in all the games, and sort of what happened with that, Mom?
Well, I think it was you and your sister. There was an argument over a call.
Yeah.
And I don't know what, we never had another one of those again.
Yeah, we didn't do that again. You're right.
And then there was one parent, when you were umpiring behind the plate, and it was Rick Sales, I believe, came up to your dad because he goes, no, it wasn't Rick Sales, it was another gentleman, and said, that umpire out there, he's not doing his job. He's not even cleaning the plate. And your dad turned to him and said, well, I can't even get him clean his room. What do you want me to do?
Yeah. No, I remember actually using my foot to clean the plate, and not thinking back on it now is quite unprofessional. But I did, in my defense, I did stay with it from the time I was 12 till I was like 19. I also made the District 21 umpire crew with Gary Mendoza and Roger Birdsall and those guys. I did use a brush after that and did do pretty well. Did all of you realize sort of how innovative that was to have junior umpires? Like, did you get that idea from somewhere else? Like, I don't know of any other organization at that time that did that. None of my friends outside of Southridge Little League were umpires.
No, I don't even know if it was Ron or Lee, or it was just we were in a board meeting and everybody just it just came up. I don't even know who came up with the original idea, but once we ran with it, I think it was Lee Whitener that did it, and he said, "I'll run the classes. We can do this. I'll be willing to watch them on their games." And
Yeah.
senior umpires actually said they didn't have a problem with it, that they would, they could talk to you during games, and if you had an issue, they would talk it out and uh, let you know what was going on, teach you, correct you or whatever. But I don't think we ever ran into really any big problems other than the sibling night.
No, I don't think we ran into any problems. In fact, like I thinking back about that now, I often think about it, but thinking back about it now, like I actually ejected a coach from a game when I was 12 years old and no one knew what had happened,
Thank
and
you for your service, but you need to leave the field. I remember that.
yeah, and it was exactly the way Ron and Lee had taught us to do it. And it was because the coach kept leaving the dugout. And now, as a grandparent, right, what's it like watching your grandkids play sports, watching your son and daughter coach sports? What's that like? Is that what you thought would happen? What do you think about it? All that stuff
I,
coming to life.
I always thought you would be a coach.
Why did you think I'd always be a coach?
Pardon me?
Why do you think that?
Because you were always really into sports, and I thought you would do that. But once you connected with rugby, it became a passion, and um obsession would be a good word, actually. And you've made it work for you. So I when you started coaching them, I thought maybe you would take on a football team or something. But once rugby came along, I thought, cool, he likes this, and then the way you've stuck with it, I'm very proud of you on that. Nicole, I was very proud when she took on softball. She is she still has she's coaching now soccer with Nolan, the little one, with one of her softball players.
Yeah.
And they're coaching their kids together. So she's she's a good coach. She's tough on her kids, which is I guess she gets that from me, but I don't know. But watching my kid, I used to love to watch Madison play because she liked to be social. She didn't want to be dirty, and she tried her hardest, but she played. Deegan soccer, he was so, but he has other interests. But Nathan and Nolan, I love watching them play. I love watching Nathan play football, actually.
Yeah.
And I love watching Nolan be soccer. I think it just makes families closer. I mean, you come down to go to games. They expect you to come down to go to games. And I just think sports brings families together.
You're right. I do. There is an expectation to come in and see your nephews or my nephews and my kids do their things, right? Deegan has since stopped playing soccer and in sports, and he's now into drama and theater, and he's doing like lighting, and he was an extra in West Side Story, or I'm sorry, he was part of the Jets ensemble,
Yeah.
right? Madison has gone from soccer to softball, gymnastics, dance. She's now working as a 20-year-old and hating life being an adult. But there's an expectation that we go to sporting events and we support one another, whether it's Nicole coaching or Nolan playing soccer
or your rugby,
or me coaching rugby or playing rugby, which
or on some of the tournaments you put on for the rugby. We go to those.
Yeah, no, you do. And actually, I have a couple questions about that after, which I think will lead us to some funny stories. Now that you say it, the I think we talked about this earlier, but I think Nicole and I have stayed in sports so long because that's what you and Dad modeled, right? You set that example for us, and I think the bigger example is you didn't have a sports background. Yes, you played PE, and Dad, Dreamy McDreamerson or whatever they called him in high school, played 1 year of basketball. But like you and Dad never like shied away from that challenge. Your kids wanted to play, and we essentially challenged you and your thought process by wanting to play baseball, wanting to play football, wanting to play softball, and um, all the stuff that Nicole and I have done over the years, right? And
Right.
you know, I think there's a lot of you and Dad and me and Nicole, clearly, right? And players of mine that'll listen to this will, I think, hear a lot of you and, and me, which is weird. Sorry, uh, big feelings thinking about all these things. But I just want to thank you for that. Like, real easy to be like, yeah, my kid's in little league. I'll pay my $35 and drop them off and do those things. But it's another thing to become a coach, become a board member. To Dad built the fucking snack bar, like where Pauline and all them served round table pizza, which is my kids' favorite food on the planet is round table pizza. I don't think you guys knew that was going to be like the results you have now were going to be those results, but it's all the work that we saw you do. I just want to say thanks.
Yeah, it's all right. You have to keep it. Parents have to be involved with their children.
No, I know. Yes, of course. But like,
I always knew you and Nicole would do something with kids. I always,
yeah,
I did the same thing. We always talked about, we always knew you in some way. You'd be either coaching, Nicole teaching and being an assistant principal, and always being involved with kids because we were involved with all the kids, even outside of baseball.
yeah,
We became involved. We had one young man, and I think you know who I'm talking about. I had his birth certificate for a long time because he made all stars, and he was in a gang. And I always told him, I'm not going to give your mother back your birth certificate because she needs your death certificate. You need to stop. He's fine now. He's out. One time some of the moms we used to walk at night in Southridge, and there was
yeah.
a group of gang members sitting on a fence, and a few of them decided to be a smart Alex with us. And this kid said, you leave them alone. He was with them, but he said, you leave them alone. But I think that was another thing. We were respected in the neighborhood.
Well, yeah, you and Dad were always sort of there for, not just me and Nicole, but like many kids saw you guys. I mean, geez, Dad would give out candy bars for a trash bag filled with trash at the little league fields. How many kids did that? And obviously, I had to do it because he was my dad and he was the president at the time. But like, I think
Some of those kids just needed attention, no matter what, but you needed to give them positive attention. And
Yeah.
they used to come up and say, they're never going to pick me for All Stars because of this and that. And I said, I'll give you $5. It's the same kid. I'll give you $5. You're going to make All Stars if you do what you go to your practice, if you do this and you play good. And I handed him $5 when his name was called.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of kids had that sort of moment where they felt like they were part of something bigger because of you and Dad and the Santanas and the Rogerses and the Moraleses.
The board on themselves to make sure we would find a kid that didn't sign up and why didn't they sign up? They signed up every year, call, and they didn't have the money. Their parents didn't have the money. You don't have to pay for Little League. They're allowed to play. And I don't know how many kids we called on that one.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
just to make sure. I mean, we had problems at the field, but some of them were players that came and caused problems that were in their little gang thing at the time. But then your dad said, "Hey, you got to play. It's your brother's time to play. Please walk away." And they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just said it. We just stood up for kids.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yep.
100%. What was it like? I remember some funny anecdotes from when I found the sport of rugby, right? I'd be remiss if I didn't ask some questions about rugby here. What was it like when, you know, when I started playing rugby? What were some of the moments that were you found interesting, or they were funny, or you were just like, oh shit, what is happening now?
Well, one of the things I found funny is when I went to one of your first games, Kenny played, and
Yeah.
and so we didn't really know a lot about rugby. Still, sometimes you don't know all about it. And then I said to Kenny, "Gosh, I don't even understand what's going on. How are you doing this?" He goes, "I don't understand either. I'm just following him." So, and then I
Yeah.
one time, Nicole, we were at the field in what is that little kill,
Yeah,
and
the little cue.
you were playing, and some guy was a jerk, and he pushed you or something, and Nicole stood up and yelled, "You're just mad because the biggest guy on the field ran faster than you." And hey, Nicole. So I mean, it just some things it's just craziness sometimes.
Yeah, I rugby is a sport where the violence of action, the violence of athletics is there, right? Do you remember what Grandma said when she came to my first game? Do you remember that?
No,
Grandma, apparently you told me that Grandma was watching us play at Riverside, and she said, "Oh my God, who would love this? Who would want to play this sport?" And you turned to her and said, "Your grandson."
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
You had some crazy things happen. I mean, that when we were at the game, some of your ex players did some things that were kind of weird. We just go with the flow. I mean, it's just an odd sport, and you just go.
Odd sport? What?
Sometimes
Yeah.
your spectators are different.
Yeah, spectators are different. You're right. It's more of a party atmosphere for sure on the sidelines or something.
Fine party atmospheres. It's just when they become belligerent or rude.
Oh, are you talking about when
You're
you almost got in a fight at a PR7's event with player? Oh yeah,
your
yeah.
group doesn't go for that. We just stood right up and said, "What?"
What are some of your favorite moments from, I guess, my rugby coaching career, or me becoming a coach, or my time in rugby? What are some of your favorite moments?
You becoming a college coach, a university coach, that was pretty awesome. Coaching the Coast Guard, that was pretty cool. Um, your playing time was good. I mean, we went to a lot of them.
Yeah, you did. You did.
I think when somebody has a passion like you do at something, it's become really exciting to see you get to a point in your career that your passion has become what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
not just something that makes me proud.
Yeah. What's your favorite event to go to that I run now?
Hmm. Probably the sevens to watch your nephew go after that. What was the young lady's name?
Oh, Liz Tapuna.
Yeah. Oh, I think one of my favorite things were when we were at the sevens in San Jose and
Hmm.
Liz got red carded, and your dad afterwards told Nolan, "Ask her to sign your red card." And Liz,
Um,
you're funny, but
yeah,
your nephew loves Liz. That's,
yeah, yeah. For those who don't know, my nephew is Nolan Anthony Rodriguez, and he swears he's the greatest ball runner in the history of the sport of rugby. Tried to get my sister to drive him to Austin, Texas, and Washington D.C. because "quote unquote" Uncle needs me.
yes.
Um, he was a ball boy here in San Jose in 2023, and um, one of my favorite memories is watching him race Megan Pinson Nyan and Liz Tapuna in the lobby of our hotel.
And he
And
did all their autographs on the rugby ball.
yeah, yeah, and they asked him who his favorite team was, and he had no idea who they were, but he said the green team, which were the Loggerheads, which was their team. And they were so excited, and to see them treat him with such, respect and like excitement was really cool to see. They didn't know who he was or where he was from at all. And, it was pretty cool to see my family get excited about players in the sport that obviously weren't me, clearly,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I think one of the good ones was when we were just recently at your show, and you told your sister don't get pictures with the Olympians, but then her and her friends did after you left, and they said, well, "How do you know about not Little League? I'm sorry. How do you know about rugby?" She goes, "Oh, my brother, Sean Lindersmith. You might know him as Snacks." And she goes, "Oh, I could be getting my picture with you." So then they took the pictures and they were very excited. You didn't want her to do that.
No, it's for clarity. We were at the Pacific Nations Cup game in LA, and Steph Rivetti, Sam Sullivan, I think Spiff was there. And my sister asked if she could get a picture with the Olympians, and I had come and said hi to my family, and I said, "You can go ahead and get a picture with the Olympians anytime you'd like." And I stood up to go leave, and Nicole was like, "Oh, you're going to get me this picture now?" And I was like, "No, like
I'm
I'm not
working.
going to. I'm working. I'm not going to, bug Steph, and Steph Rivetti was there as well, and I'm not going to bug Steph and Spiff and them." And then my sister did get a picture with Steph Rivetti, who's
Yeah,
been at PR7s and a lot of other events that I've worked over the years. So it's just pretty funny.
I think I think one of the funniest times that Dad and I went to your events was when we went to Vegas, and
Yeah.
the first night we just sat down, and some drunk girl came up and slugged the Canadian person right in front of us, a Canadian fan right in front of us. It's like right in the face. This guy looked at your dad and goes, "Okay, what have we gotten ourselves into?" But I really enjoy the other nations and how they are and how they dress and how they cheer on their teams. And the Kenyans are I love to watch them. They're
Yeah.
very funny.
Yeah. The Kenyans are back on the series. So when they come to Los Angeles, it'll be good to see them engaging in cheering for Kenya on the field again. They
Well,
were
they're
awesome.
very funny fans, and they sing songs about them and everything. I like that.
We want another one, just like the other one is my favorite
But
one.
but if they do something wrong, they even say stuff about that. That's what's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you and Dad coming to LA Sevens in May of next year?
Yes, after we come back from Lake Havasu.
Okay. Awesome.
You know that. We talked about this.
I know. Is there anything else, Mom, that you think is important in terms of like the role sports and coaching has played in your life and as a parent, as a grandparent, anything else that you would want to leave people with before we sign off?
I think it's really, really important that every child is, it makes me sad when somebody doesn't have family or a parent or somebody that comes to their games. It really does. And I like to embrace those kids, and whether it's on Nolan, Nathan's team, or you guys had things. I think it's important for parents to be involved, even if it's not a parent or an aunt and uncle to show up or just show up to have
Yeah.
somebody show up. I think the world would be a better place if we had more of that. And I know the world is crazy now, but not too crazy that you can't go and enjoy a day with a bunch of kids because we still go to every game of Nolan and Nathan's, and we went to every game of Madison and Deegan's. I think it's important that these kids remember that. For me,
That's
that's
for you, that's important.
Mhm.
No, I think you make a great point, right? Like sports is a place where we learn about ourselves and we learn about who cheers you on or what we cheer for, what we celebrate as a culture and as a nation, excuse me. No, I think you make a great point, right? Showing up for people, and even if it's not sports, right? There's a lot of different competitions now out there that people could show up for. You may not even understand what you're watching, but just being there and asking questions and um, being supportive of what people are doing is super important. So that's a great point, Mom.
With our family, I think your dad and I have always tried to make it important that we show up for each other. And I think a prime example was when Deegan did the play for West Side Story. That was just so surprising to all of us, even his cousins. And I mean, his sister's been supportive. We all have, but all of us showed up for him on that play. And that to me means family and means very important stuff to those. I think that's probably one of the important things. And then the kids telling him they're so proud of him. I mean, it's not something you would think Deegan would have done, and he did it, and all of us came for him.
Yeah.
I think kids need that.
Yeah. I think it really drove Deegan's confidence up to, one, be a part of a play and a production and go to practices and stuff. And then also to see that, his work was rewarded by family attending and his cousins and sister and everybody acknowledging, what a risk and what it was like for him to take that on.
Just for him to do that. We all knew it. That was big for him.
Yeah, 100%.
And I also think it's, as a parent or a spectator or a grandparent of, like when we go to the kids' games, there's kids there that maybe don't have as much encouragement. You encourage all the kids, not just your own. You learn who they are, and when they do something fabulous, you tell them and you cheer them. And I think that's important. And that's an easy thing to do if you're a good person.
Well said, Mom. I appreciate you coming on the first Coach to Coach podcast episode and helping introduce myself and our family and sort of why coaching is important in our lives and sports plays an important role. Thank you. I appreciate it. And don't tell Dad that you were on this, and maybe someday I'll interview Dad, but
That'd be
really.
fun. I'm proud of you, bud.
Yeah. Thanks, Mom.